Across America, the landscape is dotted with remains of its past. Bridges, landmarks, battlefields, buildings. If one was to look at these historic relics, you will see the names of those who built America. Of these historic places, one name seems to be more prevalent than the rest: Andrew Carnegie. Established in 1874, the first public library in Freeport was established privately. As the number of books exceeded the capacity of its original facility, a new location for the library was provided by the YMCA in 1888. By the turn of the century, more space was required to house Freeport's extensive collection of books. Seeing a chance to spread his wealth for the good of others, Andrew Carnegie donated $30,000, now estimated to be $800,000 when accounting for inflation, to the city of Freeport for the construction of a new public library. Construction began, and the library opened on September 10, 1902. After decades of service, the library once again could no longer contain the capacity of its volumes. Seeing a need for a modern facility, the city of Freeport opened the new Freeport Public Library at its 100 East Douglas Street location in 2003. With the establishment of the new public library, the old Carnegie Library lost its purpose. Little was done with the building then, and it stood vacant for years. Becoming destitute, the building began to degrade. The once prominent center of city life here in Freeport seemed to slip away and receded to the back of the minds of its citizens. It became an ever-present reminder of the colorful past that Freeport once had, but could no longer retain. That was until 2015, when Sean Gallagher was tasked with finding a new location for City Hall.
Well, I started 4.5 years ago, and this building was vacant, so most of my time through this building has kind of looked at the wake of when they moved out of this building after the library was built. Not a whole lot was really going on here. Pretty much power was off. Water shut off, so it was kind of a gloomy dungeon through most of the building. So I've always been kind of on the we need to get moving forward and salvaging what we can from this structure before it's too late.
The City Hall building of Freeport was also in decline and disrepair. Then an idea was created. Slowly but surely, what if what was around us could be remade anew, recreated? And so, like a phoenix from the ashes, the Carnegie City Hall began to rise.
Well, I think the final straw at the old City Hall, which was a nice building in its time but wasn't any longer, came when the State Department of OSHA said your environmental air quality exceeds our limits, there's mold, you got to move out. They literally issued an administrative order and said all the employees have to move out of City Hall down the street. That triggered a move to rental quarters up the street from this building. And there was always a feeling that there needed to be a permanent City Hall that was the people's home. Rental digs didn't make it.
I think the biggest thing is we look at reuse of a building. Sometimes the existing shape of it, we have to push off to the side a little bit because this had a lot of problems. Mold, mildew, asbestos, lead paint, all that type of stuff.
So when we were first asked to design and build this renovation project, we spent some time thinking about the Carnegie as this historic monument in Freeport, and the outside of the building is amazing. You see the brick and the limestone and the detailing, as a lot of the Carnegie libraries across the United States. They're very iconic. But when we came inside the building, we noticed that it was really more of a modest structure. They didn't have the same level of ornament and detail that the outside had. So when we were thinking about how we were going to sort of breathe new life into this building and turn it from a library into a modern office and administrative area, we sort of came up with this concept that, well, let's appreciate the historic exterior, but let's breathe sort of a new, bright life into the interior.
The problem is that the city had two buildings already. It had the old City Hall and it had this Carnegie building itself. So it's a lot like you own two cars, they both need work, and you're renting a car to get around. No one would do that, and it didn't make sense for the city to do that.
This building, having the predominant structure that it is on the exterior, the familiar Carnegie face, the brick, the casework throughout the exterior, really good condition still, given its age, almost being 16 years old. But the interior was pretty much left in its original 1970s. That was the last renovation form, beat up from 30, 40 years and moving out. So that was disappointing. I certainly want to save a building like this because of its exterior. A very sound building. Concrete brickwork is really well. Needed a new roof. When I first started, we got up on the roof and there's actually trees. There's 4 roof drains at the corners of the building. Actually trees of rather decent size growing out of those roof drains. So, the maintenance had never been there on this building after the library left. It was concerning to see it, probably 5-10 years from now, it would have been deteriorated to a point where you'd be talking about demolition. So I knew that the hour was fairly short to, make something happen with this building, or else we'd be talking about another demo candidate, like we have with many of our buildings, unfortunately, in the downtown.
So we sort of thought of it like a geo. So you have this rock that you see, and it's not too fancy, but when you crack open the inside, it has a very different look. But yet they're sort of complementary in that this bright white modern interior doesn't conflict with the exterior because they're almost so different.
A lot of these Carnegie buildings, because they're 100, 120 years old now, this being the first Carnegie in Illinois that was ever constructed, you have a long history, but they were not really glamorous in the interior. Because of the historic preservation requirements, we had to keep the stained glass windows, which you wouldn't throw that out anyway, it'd be crazy. Keep the existing windows and then keep trim in the fireplaces. That was basically the goal of the Historic Preservation Office in order to get approval for the renovation. That allowed, because the Carnegies are relatively plain in the inside, your focal point is the exterior, and it always will be. The grand staircase coming up, and that's where we wanted to focus on how does it look when you open that door and you see that council chambers, because that was kind of the key. So we wanted because we had to box in the mezzanine, I wanted the city seals, or the state and federal seals up, lighted in the interior, so you'd walk in, you'd see those seals and the council chambers laid out, and then the rest of it would be whatever kind of artwork we'd ever want to put in here. So we had a lot of historic photos from prior buildings and things that we actually had at the rental building just up on the walls. We've kind of had those, kept the similar framing and make it, kind of the history. I would have liked to have brought more in, and actually I think we will over the next couple of years. The one downside of a project like this is because of its popularity, people want to move in tomorrow. So as soon as we started in June, it's when can you be done? And it's like, well, we've talked about this for 5 years. This building's sat empty for 10, but I get 3 months to build it. So a lot of that was to push through and get everybody in here as fast as possible. That doesn't allow for the cosmetic things of the artwork. So we were able to get the wayfinding stuff up, some of the logos up, but really our next step is to kind of fill out the building, and it will over time with different artwork. What I've set upstairs is I'd love to have some columns set up in the council chambers where we can display different art exhibits from whether the high school or Highland or the art museum, to bring in kind of the current culture of Freeport into the building, but then also take and salvage, depending on what we end up doing with the 230 West Stevenson Street building, bringing some of that stuff over because they have the original wood doors. Some of that stuff, if that building is ever demolished, there's a lot of intricate woodwork that would be cool to have, and try to incorporate that in some of the conference rooms, or maybe you hang a door almost like a picture frame in some of the higher spots in the council chambers. So I definitely think that's kind of a step that we did a little bit of it because we didn't have the time. Will be a step that we do over the next couple of years and slowly bring pieces in from either around the community to accent current Freeport, or things that in our buildings past that we may salvage from the other buildings.
The irony is that this building, which cost $2.4 million in total renovation, we're going to save that much money by the refinancing of our bonds. So this is a net gain to the taxpayers of Freeport, as I see it.
Well, I think it's a real positive thing. It's a reuse. The main thing, it's a reuse of an old building, which we need to do more of as long as the building is stable and it can feasibly be done. That's the first thing we have to look at. But it's a start of the city maintaining some of their buildings and to move forward and renovate one and have it laid out in such a good use today, but still have many of the historical things in it.
Everybody who has come to this building there are two things that stand out. One is the memories that they have of this building when it was a library, and I'm one of them, but also the transformation of this building. I think that we have done well by the grace and tradition of this building to keep its envelope intact, but we have updated and modernized all of the innards of this building, including all new HVAC that is decentralized room by room. So I think it works well. And my great desire is that this building can be kind of a symbol of what we can do with Freeport's old buildings all over the city. We have wonderful residential homes that are very elegant in their time. There's no reason that they can't be restored to their original luster. The same is true of a lot of downtown buildings. Many of them are in sad condition now. This building is a demonstration. It doesn't have to be that way, nor does it have to cost an ever-loving fortune to do something really cool and really tasteful, and that's what I think is true of this building. So in a real sense, this building to me is a metaphor for our city. We are doing homage to the best of the old. We're discarding what is of no longer use. We're preparing for the new, and we're reinventing our city. We've reinvented this building, and I think we can do the same for Freeport as a whole, as a community.
I was surprised to see as many people show up for it. We actually did a kind of a two-phased approach where we had the actual ribbon cutting, which I honestly thought there would be like 15 people, a couple of cameras, and we had, I don't know, a good 150 people lined up on the outside, you know, watching. Then all the staff was there on the staircase, and various people that have been a part of government for the last decade in this town. So it was interesting to see how many people showed up, because, you know, I do projects all the time throughout the city, and we don't highlight it very well. I mean, the roundabout was probably a, you know, pretty big visual for people to see, and that went, you know, half the town was against it and the other half was for it. And in this building, any of the city hall discussions have been kind of that way. So it was interesting to see people actually want to participate, and you could tell the pride on everybody's face. And then when we went through the rest of the evening, we had a walkthrough, and I think we probably had about 500 people. So, I mean, we had 700 people between the two meetings through this building. It was very interesting to see, because I expected maybe a couple hundred, and at best. And so there was a lot of fanfare, all the news stations, which I think is kind of what Freeport needs. I mean, it seemed like the timing, like Freeport needs a win for once. You know, had various, you know, job closings, and, you know, revenues are not there, and you know, Public Works and the city can't do what they'd like to do in front of everybody's home. But you know, here was something that at least you could drive by and say, you know, I got something that's nice. I come in and, you know, but then you also get the other half of that where, you know, why do they spend it on this? Why not in front of my house? You know, you can put, you know, City Hall in an RV and drive it around for all that matters, you know. So, but I think it was just the fact that for once we did something right. A lot of times in this government that I've found out is we've band-aided stuff together. Things weren't done, you know, professionally. So to take this from start to finish and do it right, I think was nice. Whether you agree with us being in this building, I think a lot of people were like, finally they got it right. So we just have the exterior to clean up here if it ever stops raining, and then make it so it's got good curb appeal, so you know, the citizens can be proud of this accomplishment, and hopefully this kickstarts, you know, a lot more projects like this.
Freeport is a historic town, with its roots stretching far into the annals of American history. From a frontier town to the Civil War to becoming an industrial mecca, Freeport has been a pivotal point in the history of Illinois. The people of this area are vibrant, dedicated, and loyal. But somewhere in our history, we have lost our footing. The once colorful streets now run gray and cold. Manufacturing has moved on. Industry has disappeared. Buildings that were once jewels of the Midwest are now shells of their former selves. Much like the Carnegie Library, the town seems vacant and hollow. The air lingers and expresses stagnation, like a river without a route to flow down. But these shells do not have to remain empty. These walls were made to stand, to remain, and that's what Freeport will do. Like so many other towns around us in the Midwest. Look around your own community and find the shells of your past, the bones of a prosperous America. Those walls still standing are a canvas to paint on, blocks to build with. Though the life of the old buildings have gone, that does not mean that life cannot be breathed back into these structures. Like kindling ready to ignite, one needs only a spark to burn. Look inside those old walls and see what could be recreated. Just as the spring changes to winter and leaves the fields empty, time changes and leaves the dwellings of our cities hollow. But winter ceases, and rebirth begins again. Inside these walls, life blossoms, and a simple spark creates a dancing flame to light the way for those who are willing to look.